Hello everyone, and on to the next book that Howard, my boyfriend, has picked out for me to read on my TBR, and that is Black Gangster by Donald Goines. And so I've gotten through 2 chapters of this book so far. Feels like a quick read, like it doesn't feel like I've gotten through 2 chapters, but I have. And that's 21 pages together. So in chapter 1 we meet Prince, who's our main character. He's in jail in Detroit at the age of 18, but he's building his drug empire from behind bars. And then in chapter 2, Prince gets out of jail, organizes his crew, and lays down all the rules for everyone to follow. And that's where I've gotten so far. I'm gonna get back to reading all my books, and I'll check in with y'all again soon. Bye. Hey y'all, just checking in on Black Gangster. So I got through a couple more chapters last night before I went to bed. In chapter 3, we see Prince's gang. We learn that Prince's gang is going to run dope and corn whiskey. He thinks these are the best chances to make it, and so that's what they're going to do. They set up a plan on how they're going to do this. And in chapter 4, and not only are they going to run corn whiskey, but they're also going to make the whiskey too. And then in chapter 4, we see Square Dave is murdered, and I think it's by the other 2 guys that we've met earlier in that chapter. I forget their names now. But that's where I'm at with Black Gangster, and I'll pick that up again later today or maybe tomorrow, depending on how far I get in Well of Ascension. But that's it for now, and I'll check in with y'all again soon. Have a great day. Happy weekend. Bye. Hey y'all, just checking in now on Black Gangster, which is a book I'm reading that was recommended by Howard, the other half of Love Story. So in chapter 5, we meet Charles Morales, who is a detective, along with his partner, Gazier, and they're basically investigating the shooting and murder of Square Dave. And we've also learned that Prince's mom was bad news, and now she's dead. And I'm thinking that they were hinting at like a drug issue, but they didn't straight say it because it was Prince's grandparents saying it. But that's what I'm thinking. Maybe more will come out later in the book. In chapter 6, there was a hit that went down, and 2 are dead, and 1 more is likely to be dead after all is done. And now Prince and the gang have to lay low. So that's my check-in very quickly for Black Gangster, and I'm gonna go back and read some more, and I'll check in with y'all again soon. Bye. Hey y'all, checking in on Black Gangster. So in chapter 7, we see Racehorse shot Al the cop point blank in the face. Killed an old couple too who were witnesses, and apparently killed his partner too. We see the police raid the club and Mahoney's son is killed, and we find out Mahoney's son was either Al or his partner. In chapter 8, we get Prince and Chinaman lay out a program that gets better education, better housing, all of that kind of stuff for their people. They're trying to get people to buy into this new thing. And then the cops raid the party rally and arrest Chinaman and Prince. And that's where I've left it now. Now I'm gonna go back and read some more. Talk to you soon. Bye. Hey y'all, checking in now on Black Gangster by Donald Goines. So I've only just thought of this today. I can use this, I think, as my own voices prompt for the Reindeer Games readathon. So that's one less book I have to try to fit into December. So that's exciting. But checking in on this now, we've got chapter 9. In chapter 9, Shortman and Donnie are now in charge of the corn whiskey operation. And then Shortman is shot by the cops. So Donnie takes over Shortman's roles, and Prince knows that the shooting was a setup by the cops. He says their story can't be true because Shortman never carried, and he would never be in that kind of situation. In chapter 10, we get Prince and Chinaman are set free from jail, but Ruby doesn't trust Roman, and we find out that Billy Boy is using the product, which is the #1 rule against against the #1 rule of any kind of operation like this. You never use the product that you're selling. Chapter 11. In Chapter 11, we get Shortman's funeral and a quote that I've pulled out from page 143. Death always gave him a feeling of being very small. Anyone that's gone through grieving can relate to that, absolutely. We also learn that Donnie let Roman talk him into stealing money from the whiskey business. And then in Chapter 12, Ruby goes and kills Billy Boy, and Donnie tells Prince over the phone about stealing money from the business and that Roman made him do it, or convinced him to do it. And then in Chapter 13, we learn that Roman and Dot, his girl, are killed in Chicago, and this was a setup by Prince because they did him wrong, so Prince took care of business. And that's where I've left off on Black Gangster, and I'm going to continue reading this, and I think I'm about halfway, and check in with y'all again soon. Bye. Hey y'all, checking in on Black Gangster by Donald Goines. So I finished this book this morning, so I'm just going to check in on the last couple chapters. In Chapter 18, we find out that Apeman is missing, and Prince has decided to just move his crack houses instead of closing down shop. He says no one's gonna force him to close down. And then Racehorse comes and says that Apeman was killed, but he won't say who did it because it's one of his guys that got him out. In Chapter 19, we see that Preacher has paid Frankie a visit and then decapitates her. Chapter 20, Donnie is trying to make it right with his family, trying to support them, buy his mom a house, all through the whiskey business with Prince. We learn that Fox is the dope connect, and he plans to leave town with Prince's money. But then Chinaman and some big giant dude show up and kill Fox, take the money and leave. And at the very end of that chapter, Donnie and his men are ambushed while they're trying to bring in the whiskey equipment. In Chapter 21, we learn that Fat Daddy and Brute are killed by the mafia and their bodies are left at the hangout. And Prince and the gang turn basically a gang war into a mob, and Bossman and Little Larry are killed in this all-out battle. In Chapter 22, Prince is planning to run. A quote I pulled out when it's talking about Ruby, Prince's girl, says, "If looks could kill, Racehorse would have been dead." And then the cops, we learn, have killed Preacher in his own home, unarmed. They just bust right in, and the cop claims it was accidental. Then we see Ruby go off with Racehorse to get the rest of the money, and she kills him because she doesn't trust him, and neither does Prince. In Chapter 23, which is the last chapter of the book, a lot happens. So the mafia put out a $50,000 hit on Prince, and Tony thinks that he'll get this because he's right there with Prince when he gets this message. He tries to hold up Prince and Ruby. Ruby shoots Tony when she sees the gun in his hand, and Tony gets one shot fired off while he's falling down, and that hits Prince. Ruby shoots Tony a few more times to kill him off, and then she takes Prince to his grandparents' house. Prince dies while Ruby goes to try to get a doctor, and he was only 24 at the time. Ruby is going to try to find a doctor when she notices there's cops following her, and she shoots Grazier when she recognizes him as he tries to pull her over. His partner fires back at Ruby, and she has head wounds, and it hints that maybe she dies at the end. It's left a little bit unopened. And that's how the book ends. So I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it was good. It was a good read. The writing was very real, and you could tell that this author was there in the middle of this. I probably won't read it again because it was a little bit too real for me, but it was a good read. It's one of those books that you have to read because it's so real. But I'll have a review coming on that in just a little bit. And that's it for now. That was Black Gangster by Donald Goines, and that fit my own voices prompt for the Shelf Space Reindeer Games readathon. So I'll check in with y'all again soon. Bye.